After my mom passed away, my dad, Nathan, became more callous. One day, he, a wealthy businessman, refused an elderly homeless man and didn't give him a meal at a restaurant. However, when he returned home, he became furious when he saw that man and me embracing. I never thought I'd see him become so consumed by his own ambition. Back then, at 45, he owned this fancy restaurant that was the talk of the town. People came from all over for the exquisite food and the air of sophistication that hung about the place like a fine mist. But let me tell you, behind that polished exterior was a man as cold and calculating as a winter storm. I remember that day like it was yesterday, though it's been decades now. Dad was standing in front of his office mirror, fussing with his tie like it was the most important thing in the world. I could see the glint in his eye as he muttered to himself, "Today's going to be extraordinary." His voice was filled with a mixture of excitement and tension that made my skin prickle. You see, the governor was coming to dine that evening, and in Dad's mind, this was his golden ticket to the big leagues. He kept on muttering, his words sharp enough to cut glass, "Everything must be flawless. Not a single detail can be overlooked." I watched him, my heart heavy, as he went on about how this event would skyrocket the restaurant's reputation and his own. "Every move must be precisely calculated," he said, and I couldn't help but wonder when he'd started seeing life as nothing more than a series of business transactions. As he left his office, I trailed behind him, feeling like a shadow he'd long forgotten about. Dad prowled through the restaurant like a lion eyeing its territory, his gaze critical and unyielding. "Nothing can go wrong," he hissed under his breath, inspecting each table setting as if looking for invisible specks of dust. I watched the staff scurry about, their faces etched with determination and a hint of fear. They knew the weight of this day. Dad's voice cut through the air like a whip, "Pay attention to every detail. This isn't just another day." With each guest that walked through the door, I could see Dad's nerves fraying at the edges. His words to the staff were sharp enough to draw blood. "Everyone who steps foot in here needs to feel like they're the most important person in the world. Our reputation depends on it. Mistakes are not an option." I winced as his voice echoed through the hall, wondering if the guests could sense the tension beneath the polished surface. As the day wore on, Dad was everywhere at once, greeting important guests, overseeing the kitchen, his eyes constantly darting about for any sign of imperfection. I stood in the corner, feeling both invisible and exposed, watching the father I once knew disappear into this relentless pursuit of success. I'll never forget that moment when the old homeless man shuffled into our restaurant. It was like watching two worlds collide, and I felt my heart twist in my chest. The man's name was Philip, and he must have been around 50, though life on the streets had aged him beyond his years. I watched as he approached the counter, his steps hesitant, like a child tiptoeing into a room full of sleeping giants. Philip's voice was barely above a whisper when he spoke, and it quivered with a desperation that made my skin prickle. He begged for any morsel of food, saying he hadn't eaten in days, and was at the end of his strength. I could see the truth of his words in the way he swayed on his feet, as if a gentle breeze might topple him over. "Anything will do," he pleaded, his eyes full of a hunger that went beyond just food. It was a hunger for dignity, for a small reminder that he was still human. The contrast between Philip's threadbare clothes and our opulent surroundings was jarring, like a discordant note in a symphony. I held my breath, hoping against hope that my father would show a glimmer of compassion. But when I saw the look of disdain in my father's eyes, I felt a chill run down my spine. His words were like ice when he spoke, telling Philip that this wasn't a place for beggars. I watched, horrified, as my father ordered this desperate man to leave immediately. He said that someone like Philip would drive away the customers, his voice dripping with contempt. "This is a high-class establishment," my father spat out, as if the very presence of a person in need was an affront to the polished surfaces and crystal glasses. I could see the wheels turning in my father's head, his only concern being how this scene might tarnish the restaurant's reputation. I stood there, watching the events unfold, realizing my father had no idea I was in the restaurant. I had always been the kind-hearted one, unlike him in so many ways. I thought to myself, today, I would surprise Dad. I slipped through the back door, feeling a mix of excitement and trepidation. Perhaps I could understand a little better how much he cherished this place. Maybe I could find something that would bring us closer together. But then, everything changed when I witnessed Philip being harshly thrown out. My heart ached as I saw my father treat him with such cruelty and indifference. Why is Dad being so heartless? I wondered, feeling my chest tighten with pain. I felt a surge of determination rising within me. I have to help him, I thought, as a wave of sadness washed over me. I rushed out of the restaurant, spotting Philip sitting on the sidewalk. I approached him gently, saying, "I'm really sorry for my father's behavior." I could see the weariness in his eyes. "If you'd like, I can take you home with me and offer you a meal," I continued. "I can't leave you here after what my dad just did. Please, come with me. I promise I'll make sure you have a proper meal." Philip looked at me in disbelief, surprised by my offer. The kindness in my eyes was something he hadn't seen in a long time. "Are you really doing this for me? After being treated like that, you're still willing to help me?" His voice was thick with gratitude, a mix of shock and disbelief. I truly am. Dad won't be back for a few hours. Let's go now, and I'll make sure you have a delicious meal, I reassured him as I helped him to his feet. As we walked toward my house, I felt an urge to know him better. "So, what's your name? How did you end up in this situation? It sounds like quite a long and painful story." I wore a friendly smile, hoping to show him that I genuinely cared. "My name is Philip. I've done many things in my life, but now I'm just trying to survive. Life took a sharp turn for the worse, and unfortunately, I ended up on the streets. It's been really tough, but I still hold on to a little hope," he replied, his gaze distant as he spoke. "I'm really sorry to hear that. My dad can be very strict sometimes, but I want to believe there's a good side to him. Maybe I need to remind him of that." I felt a mix of guilt and determination as I confessed my feelings about my father, Nathan. "Don't worry about it, young lady. I've seen much worse in my life. Just your kindness is already a great comfort to me. I never expected to meet someone so kind today." Philip tried to ease my concern with his words. When we finally reached my home, I led Philip into the kitchen. "Please, have a seat. I'll whip something up for you. It might not be gourmet, but I'll do my best to make it tasty," I said, gathering ingredients with purpose. Philip watched my movements with interest, and then he said, "I can help. I can cook a little. In fact, cooking has always been one of my passions." He slowly rose to his feet, eager to join me. "Of course, please do. It would be an honor to learn something new from you," I replied, feeling a flicker of hope in our shared moment. As I stood there, he had handed me some vegetables while answering. Relieved that I could help in a tangible way, I began working in the kitchen. Despite the age of his hands, they moved with surprising accuracy and grace. "I can see you're truly skilled at cooking. You must have been doing it for a long time, right? Maybe even as a professional?" I expressed my admiration. I had to learn many things in life. Cooking was always where I found my peace and purpose. "When I cook, I feel calm and useful," Philip answered, a smile finally gracing his face that day. "You have a natural talent. Perhaps you could teach me a thing or two. I would love to learn more about cooking from someone as experienced as you." I felt a strong desire to nurture the connection that was blossoming between us. As we worked side by side, the kitchen began to fill with delightful aromas. Philip moved patiently and meticulously, and I was captivated by his demeanor. With skills like yours, why didn't you ever think about working in a restaurant? With your talent, you could have become a fantastic chef and led a completely different life, I inquired, eager to know more about his past. He paused for a moment, lost in thought. Life isn't always fair. Sometimes, we're led down unexpectedly difficult paths. Opportunities arose, but something happened that changed my fate, he said, his words wrapped in mystery, stirring my curiosity while also filling me with a tinge of sadness. I began to feel a growing sense of understanding and empathy toward Philip. This feeling surprised me. Strangely, I feel like I can trust you. There's something comforting and familiar about you, I shared while chopping vegetables beside him. I feel the same way, Philip replied. Sometimes, we only understand the reasons people enter our lives as time goes on. There might be a significant purpose behind this meeting. He pondered quietly, holding on to a sense of hope. As time passed, the bond between Philip and me deepened. We continued cooking in perfect harmony, as if we had been doing it together forever. I don't think I've ever felt this happy in a kitchen before. It's amazing how small acts of kindness can change our days. I wish my dad could learn more of this kindness, I thought as I watched Philip put the final touches on the dish. It's truly remarkable how life surprises us. I never dreamed I'd meet such a kind friend in such difficult circumstances, Philip said aloud, reflecting on the friendship we had newly formed. With a satisfied smile, he placed the completed dish on the table. Here you go, he said, handing over the dish with a humble voice. I poured everything into this meal. I always do. I believe cooking expresses who we are and what we feel. I looked at the dish in awe. This is amazing, Philip. Thank you so much. I'm so happy we could cook together today. I spoke from my heart, filled with genuine gratitude. He replied, I should be thanking you. Your kindness and willingness to help have been an invaluable gift to me. As we sat down at the table, I felt a sense of connection that was hard to describe. I thought about how I would tell my father about meeting such a wonderful chef, and I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony of it all. Meanwhile, Philip felt a new hope blossoming in his heart. Maybe my life can change for the better. This might be the beginning of a new journey. I never imagined something like this would happen. He savored the first bite as we prepared our meal. Then he noticed a family photo displayed in the living room. His eyes were drawn to the woman standing next to Nathan. Who is she? He asked, pointing at her. She looks very special. I glanced at the photo, tears welling in my eyes. That's my mother, Erin, I replied, my voice trembling. She passed away a few years ago. She was the kindest, most compassionate person I've ever known. She always cared for others, always ready to help those in need. Every day without her is so hard, and sometimes, I wish she were still here to guide me. Philip nodded slowly, his expression turning serious. Taylor, this is quite the coincidence, but I actually knew your mother, Erin. It was a long time ago, before you were born. I worked at a small-town restaurant back then, and Erin used to come in often. She was a regular, always bringing smiles to our faces. Her heart was so generous, and her presence was always bright. I will never forget how she supported me when I needed it. I stared at Philip in disbelief. You knew my mother? That's incredible. Please, tell me more about her. I've always wanted to know about my mother before I was born. My voice was overflowing with emotion and curiosity. He smiled as he reminisced about those days. Erin was a free spirit. She spoke of dreams and hope for the future. She helped me through some tough times. Her kindness and compassion touched everyone around her, and she positively impacted so many lives, mine included. I will never forget the influence she had on me. As he shared those memories, I felt a surge of emotion, and I wrapped my arms around him in a heartfelt embrace. Just then, my father came home and saw Philip hugging me. "What's going on here?" he shouted, his voice laced with anger and suspicion. "Who do you think you are? Do you think you have the right to do that to my daughter?" I immediately pulled away from Philip, tears welling up in my eyes. "Dad, you're misunderstanding everything." Philip was just comforting me. "We were talking about Mom. He knew her, my mother, before I was born. He was sharing stories about her. Please, just listen to what he has to say," I begged. "Just once, please." My voice trembled with emotion as I pleaded. My father cast a cold glare at Philip, his face twisting with fury. "I don't want to hear some sob story from a beggar. The past doesn't matter. You don't belong here, and you certainly don't have the right to touch my daughter." He spat out words heavy with anger and disdain. He turned to Philip, eyes full of hatred. "Get out of my house right now. Never show your face here again, or I'll call the police." Philip slowly stood up, a sad but resigned expression on his face. "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Nathan. I never meant to cause any trouble. I was just trying to help your daughter face her grief. I respected your wife, she was a remarkable woman. But if my presence is unwelcome here, I'll leave right away." He spoke quietly and made his way toward the door. I rushed to my father, tears streaming down my cheeks as I implored him. "Dad, please stop. Philip hasn't done anything wrong. He was just helping me deal with my sadness about Mom. It's cruel to push him away like this." I pleaded desperately. "I just wanted to hear more about her. He knows so much. Please, just give him a chance, one chance." But my father remained unmoved. "Taylor, you don't understand. I can't have someone like him around us. I don't trust him, and I don't want him in our home. Now, go to your room. Leave the rest to me." He said it firmly, leaving no room for argument. I watched Philip walk out of our restaurant, and let me tell you, it felt like my heart was being squeezed in a vice. Even though I couldn't read his mind, I could see the weight of the world on his shoulders. I imagined Philip thinking to himself, "I just wanted to help," as he trudged down that dark street. Bless his heart, he probably felt like he didn't belong anywhere, like his very existence was causing troubles. I wanted to run after him, to tell him it wasn't his fault, but my feet felt like they were stuck in molasses. It was like watching a scene from one of those heart-wrenching movies, where you just want to reach through the screen and give the poor soul a hug. But you know what? There was a tiny glimmer of hope in all that darkness. I like to think that our brief interaction, as small as it was, brought him a moment of peace. It wasn't much, but sometimes a small kindness can be a lifeline when you're drowning in despair. As I watched Philip disappear into the night, I made a silent promise to myself. I vowed that somehow, someway, I'd find a way to make things right, to balance the scales that life had tipped so unfairly against him. The next day, I couldn't get Philip out of my mind. I thought to myself, I need to find him. As I prepared to go to the restaurant with my father had told me I should come along to help him finish up some work. I figured maybe I'd have a chance to look for him along the way. My heart was heavy with worry, burdened by guilt for not fighting hard enough for Philip. My father was in a hurry and didn't pay much attention to me. He snapped, "Let's go. We have a lot to do today. Just behave yourself and don't cause any trouble." I nodded, but I made up my mind to look for Philip while my dad was distracted. Once we arrived at the restaurant, I immediately began searching for him. I thought, he has to be around here somewhere. Walking around the area, I felt my heart grow heavier. The ache of not being able to find him was almost unbearable. I whispered, "Philip, please come out. I want to talk to you. I just need to know you're okay." I kept searching, desperately, like a prayer hanging in the air. After a while, I leaned against a wall, tears streaming down my face. "Where are you, Philip? I just want to help you. I can't let this end like this." I murmured, my voice choked with sadness. Then, I heard a familiar voice. "Taylor, why do you look so sad?" It was a gentle, concerned tone. Philip was standing just a few feet away, holding a bag of food. As he stepped closer, I wiped my tears and rushed to embrace him tightly. "Philip, I was so worried. I'm so sorry about yesterday. My dad treated you unfairly, and you deserve so much more respect. I really appreciate you, and I want to apologize on my father's behalf." I spoke with heartfelt sincerity. Philip held me gently, understanding my feelings deeply. "Don't worry, my sweet girl. Your father is just trying to protect you in his own way. He's likely doing what he thinks is best for you, even if it means being hard on others. But truly, I'm fine." His soothing words calmed my racing heart. I took a step back, looking into his eyes seriously. "I want you to always be near me. I want you to be a part of my life. I wish we could see each other more often, maybe meet in the park?" I asked hopefully, my heart yearning for connection. As I tried to keep my casual tone, I could sense the tension in the air. I knew I had to be careful with my father's approval. When I saw my father talking to an old family friend, Raymond, I felt a chill run down my spine. I had always found Raymond a little suspicious, even from the time I was young. "Dad, can I go to the park for a bit? I want some fresh air to relax. I promise I'll be back before we leave." I pleaded, trying to sound as casual as possible. My father, caught up in his conversation with Raymond, nodded absent-mindedly. "Sure, but don't take too long. I have things to do here, and I might need your help later." He said that while sending me off, but a part of their conversation caught my attention. "The numbers add up, but we have to be more careful. The last shipment almost got traced," Raymond whispered in a low, conspiratorial tone. "We need to keep this under wraps. Any mistake could come at a huge cost," he warned. I felt a surge of curiosity mixed with anxiety. What are my dad and Raymond involved in? What are they hiding, and who don't they want to know? I thought as I tried to hide behind a nearby wall, straining to catch more of their conversation. This could be important. It might explain my dad's strange behavior lately. My father responded cautiously to Raymond's words. "Don't worry, Raymond. Everything is going smoothly, and nobody suspects a thing. We just need to follow the plan we discussed. If we stay careful, we won't have any problems." Chills ran down my spine. What is my dad involved in? This feels serious and dangerous. Is he putting himself at risk, or is he endangering others? I need to know the truth. But how can I find out without him noticing? I thought, feeling my heart racing in my chest. I knew I had to be careful not to let them know I was listening, yet my curiosity and anxiety kept me rooted in that spot. Raymond's voice became more tense as he continued. "Nathan, any mistake can cost us all dearly. The last thing we want is to attract attention from authorities or anyone else." My father nodded seriously. "I know, Raymond. We're being very careful. Trust me, it's all under my control. If we stick to the plan and execute it perfectly, there won't be any issues. No one will get in our way, and no one will notice." A tight knot formed in my stomach. What was my dad involved in? It felt like something truly serious. If he was putting himself in danger, or perhaps endangering someone else, I needed to know the truth. But how could I uncover that without him noticing? I spoke with a trembling voice, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over me. Philip frowned, sensing the gravity of the situation. He told me it was extremely important and that I needed to be cautious. First, we had to figure out exactly what they were doing. He added that I shouldn't put myself at unnecessary risk and suggested we think about how to investigate without raising suspicion. He reassured me that maybe it wasn't as serious as it seemed. He didn't think my dad was a bad person, and if he was involved in something, we could resolve it together. Listening to Philip's thoughts offered me a glimmer of hope, and I nodded, finding some comfort in his presence. I realized that we had to move carefully and wisely. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, but I couldn't ignore what I had heard. I felt a new resolve blossoming within me as I said we would uncover the truth together. As Philip and I walked through the park, I was engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions. I felt anxious about my dad's conversation with Raymond, yet at the same time, I experienced a sense of calm just being with Philip. I thought I needed to distract myself. I had to regain my composure, understanding everything felt like an uphill battle. Philip tried to soothe my worries. He suggested he'd get us some ice cream, thinking it might lift my spirits. "Just wait here, I'll grab us some ice cream. It'll help lighten your mood," he said with a warm smile. His kindness warmed my heart, and I couldn't help but smile back. "Thank you, Philip. You really know how to uplift someone." "I never imagined ice cream could make me feel this much better," I responded, appreciating the simplicity of his thoughtful gesture. When Philip returned with 2 ice creams, he handed one to me. "Here, enjoy this. These moments matter the most," he said as we settled on a bench. As we savored our treats, we began to talk about my mom, Erin. "Your mom was truly a remarkable woman. No matter how tough her situation was, she always found time to help others. She had a light that made people feel special," Philip recalled, thinking back to when Erin used to visit the restaurant where he worked. "She always had a smile and offered kind words. I'll never forget how much she helped me when I was struggling," he added, his voice laced with warmth and admiration. Tears started to flow down my cheeks again, but this time they were tears of joy and gratitude. Hearing about my mom made her feel closer to me. Thanks to Philip, I felt like I was getting to know her better, almost as if she was still watching over us. "Philip, you're such a blessing in my life. I don't even know how to express my gratitude," I said, feeling overwhelmed by the connection we shared. He gently placed his hand on my shoulder, responding with warmth and understanding. I felt a wave of relief wash over me as Philip spoke. He said he was truly glad to be able to help me. "Taylor," he continued, "your mom was really special to me." Hearing that made my heart swell, because my mother was a beacon of light in my life. Philip mentioned that helping me felt like returning the kindness my mom had shown him. Then, he shifted the conversation to my dad, suggesting we think about how to investigate what he was doing. He reminded me to stay safe and avoid any unnecessary risks. As we discussed the papers I had overheard my dad talking about, I sensed the urgency in his tone. Philip pointed out that we needed solid evidence to understand what was truly going on. I felt a knot of anxiety tighten in my stomach as I nodded in agreement, fully aware of how serious the situation was. "I'll find those papers," I promised, determination fueling my voice. "I'll be careful and make sure my dad doesn't notice." Later that night, I waited in my room, heart racing with anticipation as I tried to strategize my next move. My dad, Nathan, came home later than usual, carrying a file filled with papers. That was my moment, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. I greeted him as casually as I could. "Dad, you're home late." I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of my concern palpable. He looked at me, fatigue etched on his face, and responded, "Yeah, work was hectic today." His voice carried a hint of worry as he continued, "I was looking for you at the restaurant. I get anxious when you disappear like that." Hearing his concern tugged at my heart, but I needed to stay focused. Taking a deep breath, I quickly concocted a trustworthy excuse. "I'm sorry, Dad. I just needed some time to myself. I went for a walk in the park to clear my head." I could feel a pang of regret as I spoke, wishing I had informed him. He sighed, accepting my explanation, but his worry still lingered. "Just be more careful next time, Taylor. It's been a long day, I'm heading to bed." He turned away, taking the file with him, and I watched him disappear into his room. I knew I had to wait until he was asleep. Once I was sure he was out, I slipped quietly into his study, my heart pounding in my chest. I grabbed the file, feeling a rush of urgency. I thought, I have to hurry. I need to be careful. Back in my room, I opened the file, scanning through the documents, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and determination. The papers were filled with financial transactions and contracts, confirming my suspicions. This must be what Dad was talking about with Raymond, I thought, my mind racing. I carefully copied the documents on my printer, making sure to handle everything with the utmost caution. Once done, I returned the file to my father's study, hoping I had replaced everything just as I found it. "Please don't let him notice," I prayed, my heart racing as I closed the door behind me. I tucked the copies away in a safe place, finally allowing myself to rest. As I drifted off to sleep, I hoped tomorrow would bring me the answers I so desperately needed.
The next morning, Nathan woke up and headed straight to his study to check the documents. Something felt off. "These papers, they seem like they've been moved," he thought, frowning slightly. "Could someone have tampered with them? I can't imagine Taylor would be interested in something like this, but I need to stay cautious." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I really don't want her involved in this," he muttered under his breath.
The moment my father called me into his study, I felt my stomach drop. His voice had an edge of suspicion as he asked, "Taylor, did you touch my documents last night?" I tried to stay calm, even though my insides were twisting. "No, Dad," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I was in my room all night. Why would I mess with your papers? I don't even know what you're talking about." I made sure my answer sounded as natural as possible, hoping he wouldn't catch on to anything. For a moment, he just looked at me, searching for a reason to doubt me. But he couldn't find one. "All right," he finally said, though I could sense a hint of doubt lingering in his words. "Just be careful. These documents are highly confidential and important. We can't afford for anything to happen to them." I nodded, but the tension only tightened in my chest as the day went on. Alone in the house, I felt the weight of what I needed to do. I had to show these documents to Philip. If anyone could help me figure out what they meant, it was him. I took a deep breath, grabbed a copy of the papers, and headed to the park where we had planned to meet. When I arrived, Philip was already there, his face clouded with concern. "Taylor, are you all right?" "What happened?" he asked, noticing the determined look on my face as I approached. "I'm fine," I said, though inside, I wasn't sure if I really was. "But I need to talk to you." I managed to get a copy of the documents my dad brought home. "I think they're connected to that conversation we had." I handed him the papers, watching as his expression grew more serious with each passing second. "Taylor, this is big," he said after reading for a moment. "From what I can see, your dad might be involved in some illegal financial dealings. This looks like money laundering or fraud. And he's using the restaurant's name to cover it up. His words sent a cold shiver down my spine. What am I supposed to do, Philip? I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. I can't just confront him without enough proof. And if my dad is in danger, or worse, putting others in danger, what then? I've already lost my mom. I can't bear the thought of losing him too, especially if he's caught up in something like this. I felt lost, desperate for any guidance. Philip paused, thinking carefully before he spoke. We need to be cautious, he said finally. First, we have to figure out where this money is coming from and where it's going. If we can trace that, we might be able to uncover the truth. I nodded, trying to focus through the mix of fear and determination swelling inside me. I have to find the truth, I said, my voice firm. I can't just ignore this. Thank you, Philip, I added, feeling a surge of gratitude. I don't know what I would have done without you. He gave me a reassuring smile and placed a hand on my shoulder. We'll get through this together, Taylor. I promise. I'll help you, and we'll do everything we can to uncover the truth. We just have to take it one step at a time. If we keep digging, we'll find the answers we need. He sounded so certain, and I clung to that hope. Let's go over the documents, analyze every detail, and come up with a plan. We'll meet here every day and keep investigating. But we have to be careful. We can't let anyone get suspicious, he said, his tone serious. I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation settle over me again. Yeah, I agreed. We have to be smart about this. I can't let my dad know anything until we have solid proof. We need to be patient and careful. As night fell, I returned home, feeling a little more at ease knowing Philip was by my side. I'll find the truth, no matter what, I thought to myself as I collapsed into bed, exhausted but still determined. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun had just begun to peek over the horizon. As I got ready to meet Philip again, I couldn't shake the mix of anxiety and anticipation that something new might be uncovered today.
Nathan was in his home office, going over the documents he had brought home the night before. He remembered noticing the papers were slightly out of order when he got up this morning, but didn't think much of it. Must have been half asleep and moved them around, he told himself, trying to convince himself that nothing was wrong.
When my father left the house to head to the restaurant, I saw my chance. I went straight back to his study, determined to find more clues. My heart was racing as I took some of the documents, knowing I'd have to return them later without getting caught. Stay calm, Taylor, I told myself. I need to show these new papers to Philip. But before I could do that, I had to make sure my dad didn't notice anything. With every step down the stairs, my heart pounded louder, but I kept going. By the time I reached the park, Philip was already there, waiting for me, his face clouded with concern. Taylor, are you all right? Did you find anything else? He asked, the worry clear in his voice as I approached. I nodded, trying to steady myself. Yes, Philip, I found new documents in my dad's study. This might help us understand more, I said, handing them over. He took the papers and started reading, his eyes moving carefully over each line. The longer he read, the more serious his expression became. These documents confirm our suspicions, Philip said gravely. Taylor, your father seems to be involved in something illegal. This transaction looks very shady, and the amounts are huge. The products aren't even specified. I've heard of owners doing things like this. Sometimes it's illegal trade, like selling endangered animal meat. It's possible that's what your dad is caught up in. But we need more proof. His words weighed heavily on me, pressing down like a storm cloud overhead. We spent hours in the park, going over the documents again and again, trying to uncover every piece of the puzzle. With each new discovery, it felt like the weight on my chest grew heavier. "I can't believe this," I whispered, my voice trembling. "My dad, involved in something like this?" It was hard to speak through the shock and disbelief. "This clearly shows money laundering or tax evasion. He's funneling money into offshore accounts. That's completely illegal. How could he get involved in something so dirty?" Philip looked at me with sympathy, his eyes softening. "I know it's heartbreaking to see someone you love involved in something like this," he said gently. "It feels like your world is shattering. But we need to stay focused on uncovering the truth and stopping this. We can't let this illegal activity continue. It's our duty to do what's right." His words were meant to comfort me, but the pain was still there, deep inside. Tears started to spill down my cheeks as I nodded. "I never thought my dad would do something like this," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "I always saw him as strict but fair. And now, everything's changed. I don't even know what to believe anymore." It felt like my heart was breaking with every word I said. "But we have to do what's right," I continued, my voice shaking. "Even if it means confronting my dad. I can't stand by and let him hurt others with his actions." Philip placed a hand on my shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "We'll face this together, Taylor. You're not alone," he reassured me. "We'll uncover the truth and make sure justice is served. But we have to be careful and strategic about how we move forward." His promise gave me a little strength, but the road ahead still seemed so uncertain.
Nathan and Raymond had returned to the house, and they were going through the rest of the documents. "Something's not right, Raymond," Nathan said, his voice tight with frustration. "A few important documents are missing. Along with the doubts I've had lately, it's starting to feel like my daughter is involved in something against me. Someone's using Taylor to try to bring me down. I need to find out who's pulling the strings." Nathan's words were filled with anger and suspicion. Raymond looked at him with concern. "We need to figure out what's going on immediately. If someone is trying to expose us, we have to act fast and protect our interests. First, we need to find out how much Taylor knows and who she's working with." Raymond agreed with Nathan's suspicions.
I had just walked back into the house when I spotted my father and Raymond together, and I could feel the surprise wash over me. "Dad, Raymond, what are you doing here?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but my nerves betrayed me. Nathan approached me with a serious look, his eyes filled with a mix of concern and determination. "Taylor, I need you to be honest with me. Something's going on. Important documents are missing, and I suspect you're involved. What are you doing? Who are you working with?" His words struck me like a cold wind, chilling my bones. I took a deep breath, desperate to maintain my composure. "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't touched any documents. I was just meeting Philip. He's a friend who's helping me through some things." I tried to sound convincing, but I felt the weight of my father's doubt hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Nathan furrowed his brow, clearly not buying it. "Philip? That beggar? You spent the whole day with him?" His disbelief and anger surged through me like a wave crashing against the shore. "You're asking for trouble, Taylor," he said, his voice thick with frustration. My heart raced, caught in the storm of his accusations and my own fears. I knew I had to protect myself, but the thought of confronting my father about my investigation felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss. Would he ever understand why I was doing this? The uncertainty gnawed at me, pulling me in different directions. I had to find a way to make him see.
Nathan turned to Raymond, his voice cold and unyielding as he commanded. "Find that Philip. Investigate what he's really up to and what he's doing to my daughter." Raymond nodded, quickly setting out to follow the order. He found Philip in a park, deep in thought about the recent events. "Are you Philip?" Raymond approached with a forced smile, asking the question. "I have a proposition for you. If you leave town and never come back, I'll give you a good amount of money. Just stay away from Taylor." Philip looked at Raymond with a disdainful gaze. "I'm not interested in money. I'm here to help Taylor. I won't abandon her. If you think you can buy me off with cash, you're sorely mistaken," he replied firmly, his voice steady. Raymond narrowed his eyes, his expression growing increasingly threatening. "You're making a big mistake. It doesn't matter what you think. But if you refuse my offer, you better be ready for the consequences. Are you prepared to face my wrath?" Raymond moved dangerously close to Philip, speaking in a menacing tone.
The next morning, I found myself locked away in my room, engulfed by a growing sense of despair. I could feel the walls closing in around me, like a vice squeezing the air from my lungs. I thought to myself, I have to get out of here and deliver those documents to the police. But then another voice inside me whispered, how can I do that when Dad has me trapped like this? The weight of helplessness pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe as I pondered my next move.
At that moment, Philip found himself in a hospital. He had been discovered unconscious after being punched by Raymond. Lying in the bed, he reflected on everything that had happened. I have to recover quickly, he thought. Taylor needs me. I can't leave her alone in this situation. He tried to ignore the pain coursing through his body. He felt brave and determined, but he knew she was facing a much bigger problem than he could imagine. No matter the cost, he had to be by her side.
I found myself at home, my determination solid as I resolved to push forward with the investigation. Thoughts raced through my mind, contemplating how I could slip out of the house and deliver those documents to the police. If I could distract my father long enough, maybe I could get outside and hand over the evidence. I had to move quickly and efficiently, every moment felt precious. With each step, I mapped out my plan, knowing the stakes were higher than I had ever imagined.
However, Nathan grew increasingly cautious, locking her in the house while he was away and keeping a close watch on her movements. He thought to himself, there's no doubt she's involved in something. It could bring us trouble. I can't let her outside. With that in mind, Nathan took every measure to ensure Taylor couldn't act against him.
As time passed, the tension between my father and me grew thicker, almost like a fog that filled every corner of the house. I knew I had to find a way to escape. There was no way my father could continue with these illegal activities. Philip had risked everything to help me. And now, I had no idea where he was. I felt a surge of determination as I thought, I needed to take action. With each tick of the clock, my resolve only intensified. I reminded myself, I had to move wisely. My father couldn't know what I was planning. I needed to get these documents to the police. To find a way to bring justice to light. I mapped out every move in my mind, knowing each step had to be precise and careful.
At that time, Philip was still at the hospital, but worry and anxiety for Taylor kept him from resting peacefully. He thought to himself, I can't just lie here. She needs me. Mixed with frustration and determination, he pondered, she's in danger and needs my help. It doesn't matter what the doctors say. I have to get out of here. With that resolve, Philip ignored the pain from Raymond's beating, and he stepped out of the hospital room with purpose. He knew he had to do something to help Taylor before getting the doctor's approval. She can't face this alone. I need to act now. As he thought that, he made his way to the reception desk and asked to make a phone call. This is a gamble, but it's all I can do right now. He felt his heart racing as he dialed. Hello, is this the police? This is an emergency. There's a corruption case involving Nathan and Raymond. They're involved in money laundering and tax evasion. I have evidence, but I need your help to deliver it. Please come quickly, I'll explain everything when you arrive. Philip hung up, hoping his words would change the situation. I just hope they make it in time. Taylor can't stay trapped in this mess. He thought that as he headed to Taylor's house. The receptionist couldn't understand why he had called the police and looked puzzled.
At that time, I was engulfed in despair. I thought, I had to get out of there. I couldn't stay trapped any longer. I needed to deliver those documents to the police, and make my father and Raymond pay for their crimes. I felt a surge of determination rising within me. I told myself, there was no other option but to escape. I had to seek help before my father stopped me. I quickly gathered my things, and I broke a window to escape the house. But just as I did, my father and Raymond returned, and they spotted me outside. I heard Nathan's furious voice shouting, "Where do you think you're going, Taylor?" He was seething with anger. "You're planning to run away and betray us, aren't you? Do you even know what you're doing?" I faced my father, tears brimming in my eyes, yet I stood my ground. I said, "I know what I'm doing, Dad. I'm trying to do the right thing. I can't allow you to keep hurting people. I can't let you keep inflicting pain on others with your illegal actions." My voice trembled, but I spoke firmly. "You know this is wrong. I might not understand everything you're involved in, but I know you're committing fraud, handling unidentifiable goods. That's against the law." Nathan advanced toward me, his rage palpable, and he hissed, "Ungrateful child. Everything I've done was to give you a better life. And yet, you would betray your own family." He raised his hand as if to strike me. "Do you even comprehend what you're trying to do?" His voice dripped with venom. In that moment, Philip appeared in front of the house, breathless yet resolute. "Nathan, leave her alone. I won't let you hurt your daughter." Philip stepped between me and my father, and he said, "She's just trying to do the right thing. You need to stop this." I felt a wave of relief wash over me, grateful for Philip's intervention. "Philip, you came. I knew you wouldn't abandon me. We have to expose all of this and put an end to the corruption." I spoke with renewed courage. Raymond, with a mocking smirk, looked at Philip and said, "Are you really going to challenge us again? Didn't I teach you before what happens when you stick your nose where it doesn't belong? If you don't accept my proposal, I'll end you right here." With that, he moved forward with clear intent to use violence. My father nodded, coldly commanding, "Raymond, do it. Stop him. We can't let him interfere any longer." But just as Raymond lunged at Philip, the police arrived, and my father and Raymond were arrested. I was immediately protected as a victim, while Philip raised his hands in surrender, but I hurried to intervene. "He's on my side. Philip helped us with this accusation. Please, don't arrest him." I rushed to explain the situation. The police handcuffed my father and Raymond, and I submitted the evidence to the station. "Here's all the evidence you need. These documents clearly show that my father and Raymond were involved in illegal activities. They must be stopped." I spoke with a mix of nerves and strength. Based on that evidence, the police launched a full investigation. My father and Raymond lost all their businesses, and they were made to compensate for the damage caused by their corruption. It turned out Philip was right. The unidentifiable products were actually the meat of rare animals, leading to my father's business license being permanently revoked, leaving him unemployed. They lost everything, wealth and power, and fell into poverty. I thought, this is the just reward for all their sins. It hurt my heart, but this was the truth. Meanwhile, Philip took encouragement from me and began selling food at traffic stops. "Your cooking talent is incredible, Philip. You have to let more people know about it, I said while helping him. Eventually, Philip's food stall thrived, and he was able to earn a living with pride and honesty. I moved in with my uncle and aunt, but I never forgot about Philip. Philip, you're a part of my life. From now on, my uncle and aunt will always take me to see you. Finally, you'll escape the streets and get the life you deserve, I said, hugging him gently. You'll always be like a father to me. Philip continued to expand his business, capturing the hearts of many with his humility and kindness. He was invited to local TV shows and even thrived as a food critic, yet he always maintained that humble and kind attitude. I'm just sharing what I love with people. Cooking is about connection and bringing happiness. He spoke, grateful for the opportunities life had given him.
On the other hand, Nathan found himself forced to distance himself from Taylor, living with the guilt of his actions. He realized he had lost everything because of his poor choices. I've lost my daughter, my business, and my dignity. Now, I have to live with that truth. He pondered the consequences of his actions, filled with regret. Raymond, too, had lost his fortune and was facing the law to pay for his sins. Everything was going so well until that girl and that bum ruined everything. He reflected on his situation as he faced his sentence.
I continued to grow up in a safe and loving environment, immersing myself in my studies and volunteering. The lessons my mother and Philip taught me always echoed in my mind. I was determined to live by the values they instilled in me. I believed goodness and justice would always prevail. That conviction drove me to pledge my life to contributing to the world. In that moment, I felt a sense of purpose blossom within me. I knew I was part of a story larger than myself, a story that was just beginning. As I looked back, I recognized that my journey alongside Philip was more than just a tale of survival, it was a testament to the strength of righteousness and kindness. Even in the face of adversity, I learned that truth and integrity could forge a path forward. That realization filled me with hope, a quiet strength that urged me onward. I understood then that my experiences were not just my own, they were lessons meant to inspire others. My heart swelled with pride as I reflected on the journey we had taken together. In the end, our story closed with a promise of new beginnings.
If this story has captivated you, I would truly appreciate it if you could give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support is our greatest motivation to continue providing heartwarming stories almost every day. Stay tuned so you don't miss the next incredible story that will be available soon. We deeply appreciate your support. Until next time, take care and may God bless you.